interesting that it's called, I mean, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
there is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
That's correct. I think that's not actually, you're right, the name raises questions, and certainly there's been some much covered internal politics on that show, but I do think that, you know, there is space. Even that show does have space. When Whoopi said what she said, there was quick pushback from other panelists. They were like, oh, I don't know. Actually, I think that might not be right. That's it.
Yeah, I got bad news for you. They don't have a monopoly on stupid. You wear Queers for Palestine t-shirts and masks 2 years after the pandemic ended. And you can't define woman, I mean person who menstruates. You're the teachers' union education party, and you've turned schools and colleges into a joke.
Bill Maher, the outspoken comedian known for rejecting outrage and self-righteous behavior on television, eventually turned his attention towards Sunny Hostin's surprising shift in perspective. During several episodes of Real Time with Bill Maher, Maher openly criticized Hostin and the panel on The View for the way they handled certain political discussions, and the comments clearly didn't sit well with them. Before we continue, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and now let's get right into the story.
It struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything, and I know that you're
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected. Yeah. So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized, and so I was surprised to hear you use the term, because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words
and
migrate.
So why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice, who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want, because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that.
Sunny Hostin seemed convinced she had finally cornered Bill Maher when she challenged him over his repeated criticism of the word woke, accusing him of sounding more in line with conservative talking points. Since Maher has long been viewed as someone connected to the political left, she likely expected the question to put him on the defensive. But instead of backing down, Maher stayed completely calm and shifted the conversation in a different direction. According to Maher, the term may have originally carried a meaningful message within parts of the Black community, but over time, he argued, it had grown far beyond that original purpose. He explained that the word had been reshaped and stretched into something tied to extreme ideas and sweeping cultural positions that many everyday people simply don't connect with anymore. The mood in the room changed almost instantly. Hostin looked caught off guard by the response, as if she hadn't expected Maher to answer with that level of confidence. The rest of the panel also appeared surprised as Maher pressed forward, building toward another point that landed with even more impact than the first one.
But don't tell me the left had...
Maybe the super far right.
Well, he's talking about the left. Well, then
okay, but we talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right, and I can't say it enough. I think they're the bigger threat. But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a joke. But,
too dark.
Well, maybe it is, but it's true. I mean, if I had any doubt that I was right about the change that's happened in the left, watching people protest for a terrorist organization like Hamas, that straightened me up pretty quick.
Bill Maher then took the discussion in a completely different direction, arguing that the political left has transformed dramatically over the past decade. In his view, it has become more rigid, more aggressive, and increasingly disconnected from ordinary people. Even as Sunny Hostin continued trying to steer the conversation back toward criticism of the right, Maher refused to follow the expected path. Rather than chasing easy applause lines, he focused on what he believed was a deeper problem inside his own political side. That decision noticeably raised the tension in the room. It was clear this wasn't the kind of exchange Hostin had prepared for, and the discomfort slowly began to show. The conversation also started to feel more personal. Viewers have long associated Hostin with many of the same progressive ideas Maher was criticizing, especially through several widely discussed television moments. So when Maher challenged those beliefs directly in real time, the debate suddenly shifted from playful back and forth into something far more awkward, intense, and revealing.
Someone must tell the usual suspects on the far left that the saying is, when you're in a hole, stop digging, not keep digging. Talk about doubling down on what got you in the first place. Even the one concession I've heard a few people on the losing side offer, that liberals should stop saying the Trump voters are stupid, comes with a kind of unspoken parentheses, we know they are stupid, just don't say it.
That's when the conversation takes an even more fascinating turn. From the very start of the clip, Bill Maher carefully frames Sunny Hostin and the panel on The View as moving much farther toward the political left than many viewers may realize. He never directly says the label out loud, but the message behind his comments is impossible to miss. The moment carried extra weight because the hosts of The View had previously made harsh remarks about Trump supporters, with some comments suggesting those voters were uninformed or easily misled. Maher pushed back strongly against that idea. He made it clear that he doesn't see millions of voters as foolish people. Instead, he argued that many were frustrated by cultural messages, policies that clashed with their personal values, and what they viewed as political overreach. At that point, Maher draws a very firm line. What began as a light exchange suddenly transforms into a far more serious and uncomfortable discussion about why people make the political choices they do. The mood shifts quickly, and the debate becomes less about quick television moments and more about the deeper frustrations influencing voters across the country.
I got bad news for you. They don't have a monopoly on stupid. You wear Queers for Palestine t-shirts and masks 2 years after the pandemic ended. And you can't define woman, I mean person who menstruates. You're the teachers union education party, and you've turned schools and colleges into a joke.
The discussion becomes even more divided when Bill Maher begins bringing up specific positions that Sunny Hostin defended on The View. He points to several controversial topics, including the show's strong support for mask mandates during the COVID-19 period, even as public debate over their effectiveness in certain situations continued to grow. Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg had both strongly encouraged strict compliance at the time, often describing it as a matter of responsibility and public safety. During one especially tense exchange, Goldberg openly criticized Maher for questioning prolonged mask rules, turning the segment into a heated on-air clash. Maher uses that moment to argue that some media organizations dismissed opposing opinions far too quickly instead of allowing open discussion. As the debate intensifies, it becomes clear that this is no longer a simple disagreement between television personalities. The conversation turns into a much larger conflict over values, trust, and freedom of opinion, with neither side willing to back away from its position.
About Whoopi Goldberg, because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before. Sure. So she was, everybody was like, oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma. First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But they're thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Whoopi attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. They just happen to coincide. But can I just say this? I had on last week Ira Glasser, former longtime head of the ACLU, talking about free speech. Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I hope is still a friend, we can disagree with each other, should not be canceled or put off her show, as much as I totally disagree with her crazy statement.
At this stage of the conversation, Bill Maher openly admits that Whoopi Goldberg has criticized him many times over the years, especially regarding his views on mask policies, which he believes were unfairly portrayed. But Maher doesn't stop there. He also brings up Goldberg's past controversy involving comments about the Holocaust, a moment that temporarily led to her suspension from The View. What makes the exchange more surprising is that, despite their disagreements, Maher actually defended Goldberg at the time. He argued that removing her from the show was an overreaction and warned that punishing people too quickly for controversial statements could threaten open discussion and freedom of expression. That point creates an especially uncomfortable question hanging over the debate. Maher suggests that even when he strongly disagrees with someone, he still pushes back against the pressure to silence them completely. In return, he wonders whether the same level of fairness and restraint would be shown to people like Goldberg or Sunny Hostin if public opinion suddenly turned against them in a similar way.
Isn't it interesting that it's called, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
There is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
That's correct. I think that's not actually, you're right, the name raises questions, and certainly there's been some much covered internal politics on that show, but I do think that, there is space. Even that show does have space. When Whoopi said what she said, there was quick pushback from other panelists. They were like, oh, I don't know. Actually, I think that might not be right. That's it.
Sometimes it feels like people defending The View may not actually watch the program closely, because if they did, they might notice a pattern that's easy to miss at first. The show often presents itself as a place where many different opinions can be discussed openly, yet most of the panel tends to circle back to the same general viewpoint. In recent years, Alyssa Farah Griffin has stood out as one of the few hosts willing to challenge the group and offer a different perspective. Still, there are moments when her role can appear more symbolic than influential. Even though each panelist has a unique personality and speaking style, the overall arguments frequently support the same broader narrative, making the discussions feel less balanced than they first appear. Because of that, Griffin's position is sometimes compared to Scott Jennings on CNN. He is often viewed as the person there to represent the opposing side, even though the larger direction of the conversation rarely changes because of it. In the end, this leaves viewers asking an important question. Are these shows truly creating open discussions with equal viewpoints, or are they mainly reinforcing ideas their audiences already expect to hear?
It wasn't 21st century that prevented a woman from being president. It was the Electoral College. Democrats run for office as if the voters don't live here, as if they don't go to the grocery store and Starbucks and the office, but they do. They live here, and they actually see women and people of color, and it doesn't look like some patriarchal racist nightmare. Do problems remain pertaining to racism? Of course. But a poll last year asked, if America is the greatest country in the world, more blacks and Hispanic Americans agreed with that than the white progressives. It asked if racism is built into our society. White progressives agreed with that at higher levels than black and Hispanic people. It asked if government should increase border security. Same result. Hispanic Americans are less okay with illegal immigration than whitey.
Despite the polling data and arguments Bill Maher brought into the discussion, the hosts of The View still appear deeply committed to an identity-focused way of thinking. Throughout the debate, the conversation often returned to the idea that many major issues in America should first be viewed through race, ethnicity, or group identity before anything else is considered. Critics of that approach, including Maher, argue that it can reduce complicated problems into overly simple categories. In his view, people risk being treated more as members of groups rather than as individuals with unique experiences and opinions. He also questions systems that appear to prioritize outcomes above qualifications or personal achievement, especially when discussions turn toward opportunities such as hiring or representation. That's where the conversation becomes especially intense. Supporters believe these efforts are necessary to address historical unfairness and long-standing inequalities. Opponents, however, argue that focusing too heavily on identity can unintentionally create new divisions instead of bringing people together. As the debate grows sharper, it becomes obvious that neither side is ready to back down. Both believe they are defending fairness, but they strongly disagree on what fairness should actually look like in practice.
The votes are in. They don't want your pity. And black people can't afford to indulge rich white people's need to endlessly flagellate themselves. They just want prices to go down and good jobs and the police when you call them. Black people, they're just like us.
Here's a rewritten version that keeps the original meaning and length while making the flow more engaging and natural. The heart of the debate comes down to this. Bill Maher and others who share his perspective argue that the stronger solution is not crafting policies aimed at satisfying specific groups, but building systems that work for everyone, no matter their race or background. Their argument is simple but powerful. When institutions are dependable and opportunities are widely available, the benefits reach across society as a whole. Most Americans are not looking for constant conflict or political division. They want steady jobs, a reliable economy, safe communities, effective public services, and the freedom to live without unnecessary barriers standing in their way. According to this viewpoint, strengthening those core foundations creates lasting progress for everyone, because economic hardship and uncertainty rarely affect just one group alone. When instability grows, the consequences spread quickly. Families lose financial security, businesses begin to struggle, and everyday life becomes more stressful for people across the country. Supporters of this approach believe the focus should remain on policies that encourage broad prosperity instead of narrowly targeted solutions that may deepen divisions without truly solving the larger problems underneath.
Kamala spent 100 days telling voters, I know it feels like crime and illegal immigration are bad, but feelings, look at this chart. Yes, there's a lot to not like already about the new regime, but maybe take 1 week to ask what you did wrong. The basis for Democratic campaigns has become, we're the smart people. That we know from the get-go. No need to look into that. We know that a priori, which is a Latin phrase the red hat people wouldn't have a clue about. But they don't need to. Have you seen my "In this house we believe" lawn sign? See, it says right on it, we believe in science. Right, which is why you demanded no one even debate whether COVID could have escaped from the one lab in the one city where they were studying it. How far-fetched.
What makes Bill Maher's clash with Sunny Hostin and The View stand out goes far beyond a heated television moment. It highlights a growing divide inside the American left itself. At the center of the disagreement are two very different political approaches. One side places heavy focus on cultural language and identity-based perspectives, while the other pushes for wider solutions designed to benefit people across the board. Maher has become such a controversial figure because he is willing to challenge voices within his own political circle instead of limiting his criticism to conservatives. Whether people support his arguments or strongly disagree with them, the tension seen on programs like The View reflects a deeper struggle between reaching skeptical audiences and simply reinforcing opinions that viewers already hold. In the end, the bigger issue is not about who scored the most points during the debate. The real question is whether progressive media spaces are genuinely willing to accept criticism and open discussion. Without that openness, they risk becoming the same kind of closed-off echo chambers they often criticize in others. That wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed this discussion and want to see more content like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.